Welcome, I'm Lee Cowan, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. 90s superstar Pamela Anderson's career has been marred at times by tabloid headlines. Well, she's now in her 50s, and she's telling her own story to Jim Axelrod.
Her marriage to Tommy Lee wouldn't survive. Neither would 5 others that came after. She was barely keeping it together, focusing on the 2 young sons she had with Lee.
I was a mother. That saved me. You know, if I wasn't a mom, I don't think I would have survived.
Pamela Anderson knew she had some work to do.
To actually dig into those moments, those things we suppress and repress, and I needed to do this.
And do it alone.
Are you all done falling in love?
I don't know. Right now, it's really good for me to be alone.
Later in the show, Anderson and the challenges of overnight fame.
How are you processing being a small-town girl one moment, running down the beach in this iconic imagery of the entire decade, the next moment? How are you making sense of it?
Well, you don't realize how big the show is when you're doing it. I mean, I was on the beach, I was in the show, and then, they were sending me to Europe to do some promotion, and that's when you see all this craziness and people crashing into each other and people falling down backwards down escalators, and you just look around and say, who are they looking at? Like, what's the big deal?
Then Luke Burbank brings us an inside look at the Marble National Championship.
Rolley Hole, as it's known in this part of Tennessee and Kentucky, is a local obsession, at least for the players like Tinsley and his partner, Sailor Walden.
What do y'all think Rolley Hole means to folks around here, to this part of the country?
Hey, everybody.
No one around here seems to remember exactly how or where Rolley Hole got started, but it's been around for generations, and folks have just rolled with it.
That's all coming up right here on Here Comes the Sun. Known for her role on Baywatch and as a magazine cover girl, Pamela Anderson reflects on how an abusive childhood actually shaped her and her career. Jim Axelrod has the story.
Right here, honey.
After decades away, chasing the bright lights she so badly wanted and catching some she did not, Pamela Anderson has come home.
I was a mess. I came home in pieces.
To the sweeping rustic beauty of the Pacific Northwest.
Well, it's kind of this crazy calmness.
And her hometown on Vancouver Island called Ladysmith.
It's a healing space.
No paparazzi in Ladysmith?
Nothing too bad. I feel very protected here.
Where she found the tranquility she needed to restart her career and reset her life.
I mean, I'm usually running through there barefoot, all times of the year.
Yeah, this is a different kind of beach than the one most people associate you with.
That beach, the one she patrolled in the 1990s TV show Baywatch, had made hers, for a time, into one of the best-known faces and bodies in the world.
Dan's getting away with murder in a bikini. I mean, I didn't have to do anything.
You just had a run along the beach.
In slow motion.
And you blew up.
Just took off like crazy. It was like 150 countries. I didn't even know there were 150 countries.
The fame came with some top-shelf chaos. 6 marriages, a case of hepatitis C, and the first sex tape of the internet age, made on her honeymoon with Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee. But after years of other people telling her story on their terms,
I want to take control of the narrative for the first time.
Pamela Anderson is now telling it on hers.
I'm writing my book. This documentary is coming out. Then I can put all of this behind me.
All of this is an often harrowing tale.
I imagine you almost had that conversation with yourself. If I'm going to do this, I got to write honestly.
You have to write the full picture.
Which meant describing a childhood shaped by trauma.
There's a scene where your father is holding your mother's head to the stove and you punch your father in the face.
Mm-hmm. These were pivotal moments for me.
She was failed by so many who kids count on to feel safe. Her father.
I was told not to bring the kittens into the house. And I had my kittens in the house. And so he ended up putting them in a paper bag and running down to the beach with me, screaming after him, and he drowned the kittens.
How old were you?
Probably 6 or 7.
The babysitter, she says, sexually abused her.
A female predator. That was tough to understand.
How did that shape you?
Well, it made me trust people, less and less.
She also writes vivid accounts of being raped at 12 and again at 14.
The whole point is not keeping those secrets or those things buried.
Amid all that horror was a small stroke of good fortune. Hired by a beer company to model after she was spotted at a football game in one of their T-shirts, Lucky Break became life changer when Hugh Hefner saw the ads. Next thing she knew, she was on a plane to LA.
When the opportunity arose, you must have grabbed it because you could get out of this place where there were so many bad memories.
Yes, and my grandfather taught me, you're not an extension of the small town. You're not an extension of your parents. You're a brand new light given to this planet to do whatever you want with. In adventure, I wasn't afraid of it. I said, let's just go. Let's see where it takes me.
Within months in 1989, she was on the first of 14 covers of Playboy.
You write that you'd been sexualized so young, Playboy was an opportunity for you to take your sexuality back.
With a vengeance. Oh, it's textbook if you want to get into some psychology, but it's facing it and dealing with it in my own way.
Her way included an impulsive marriage to Tommy Lee after knowing him for just 4 days. Her lurch for security turned a bad boy rocker into her own Prince Charming.
Tommy and I fell in love. It felt like this really safe place. He would arrive at the house on a horse covered in full knight gear on, knight in shining armor, and read a scroll to me. It was just so hyper heightened, but it felt good. It felt like, oh my gosh, this is what it's all about. This is true love. It was so romantic. It was so over the top.
But that's not a foundation for sustainable love.
No, it's not a foundation for sustainable love. I haven't done that yet. I haven't figured that part out yet.
She may have been trying to buffer pain with a fairy tale, but there would be no happily ever after.
After being with Tommy, after that tape was stolen.
Ah, yes, that tape, the one she and Tommy made on their honeymoon. It was stolen from their safe. Their intimate moments turned into a profit center for others.
What do you want people to understand about it?
That it was stolen property, that it was two crazily naked people in love. I mean, we were naked all the time and filming each other and being silly, but those tapes were not meant for anybody else to see. And I've not seen it to this day. It was very hurtful.
I love you, Pam. I've been a fan of yours for so long, but I gotta say, watching you in that sex tape was like a whole new experience for me, because up until then, I'd never seen anyone get gonorrhea before.
She became a painful cultural punchline.
That's right. Miss Anderson is an actress, a model, a writer, a producer. I think for a while she was a hooker.
And she still has time to Tommy Lee's on a yacht in St. Bart's.
Her marriage to Tommy Lee wouldn't survive. Neither would 5 others that came after. She was barely keeping it together, focusing on the 2 young sons she had with Lee.
I was a mother. That saved me. If I wasn't a mom, I don't think I would have survived.
Pamela Anderson knew she had some work to do.
To actually dig into those moments, those things we suppress and repress, and I needed to do this.
And do it alone.
Are you all done falling in love?
I don't know. Right now, it's really good for me to be alone for the first time. I'm usually, people are in and out of my life or people come into my life. And I thought, the common denominator in all these relationships is me. So I need to work on that.
To conquer the demons, she traveled back to where she'd first confronted them. Back home, to the isolation of Ladysmith.
This full circle thing was very therapeutic. And I knew I kind of had to retrace my steps as a kid. And it was very visual and very triggering and very therapeutic to be home. There was a lot of anger. I felt volcanic. This rage was coming out of me. And I thought, whoa, where's that coming from? But just little by little, I started getting stronger and stronger.
Last year, she decided it was time for the next stage of her healing. One that would take place 3,000 miles from her home in Canada on Broadway. Playing Roxy Hart, the femme fatale in the musical Chicago, to some surprisingly good reviews.
I wanted to know what I was capable of. I need to know that I'm good at something, that I have some talent. It was frightening, but that's a good feeling. I mean, you want to push yourself out of your comfort zone.
What was the most frightening part of it?
Singing, can't do that. Dancing, can't do that. Acting, can't do that. Like, how am I going to do all three together?
But you had great reviews.
Yeah, I know. That was shocking.
Just outside the stage door, Pamela Anderson, at the age of 55, found just what she needed.
I felt rooted for, which was a different feeling than I felt before.
The perfect feeling to bring back home with her,
I feel like I've left here, did something crazy, and came back home in one piece.
where her pain is rooted. And now, so is her healing.
I don't know what I'm capable of. I still don't know, but I think that was the beginning. All the rest of it, it's, behind me. I feel like I'm in a really good place.
Sounds like a nice life.
It's nice. And look around me. I'm very blessed.
Stick around for exclusive excerpts from their conversation that you can only see right here on CBS News Streaming. Up next, playing for all the marbles. The marble game Rolley Hole, yep, that's really what it's called, is an institution in one southern community, but Luke Burbank shows us that it's a lot more complicated than it looks.
It's late on a chilly September night in rural Tennessee, and 62-year-old Jack Tinsley has been waiting his entire life for this moment. But what exactly is this moment, you might be wondering?
Our 2022 champions, Jack Tinsley and Sailor Walden.
It's the Rolley Hole Marbles National Championship, held each year at Standing Stone State Park.
This is like the Super Bowl of marbles. That's what we've all played for.
Rolley Hole, as it's known in this part of Tennessee and Kentucky, is a local obsession, at least for the players like Tinsley and his partner, Sailor Walden.
What do y'all think Rolley Hole means to folks around here, to this part of the country?
Everything.
No one around here seems to remember exactly how or where Rolley Hole got started, but it's been around for generations, and folks have just rolled with it.
Where does the name Rolley Hole come from?
I think it's a pretty old name. I think it goes across the waters to the Brits. It's the same game as croquet in a sense.
It's fairly self-explanatory, right? You're trying to roll towards the hole.
That tells it all.
Tennessee folklorist Bobby Fulcher helped start this tournament back in 1983 when he was a park ranger here at Standing Stone. He first got interested after meeting Bud Garrett, a resident of Free Hill, Tennessee, a community founded by enslaved people who were freed before the Civil War.
I haven't been familiarized with anybody that makes them the way I do.
Before Bud Garrett's machine, locals would make marbles by placing round-ish stones in a river and waiting for nature to smooth them out. Garrett's invention changed everything.
And that got you interested in, like, what is the history of marbles kind of in this region?
Right, why was he making marbles? And he talked about the game that, had been played up here and that they played in Free Hill, and it seemed like the right thing to look into.
And thanks to Bud Garrett and other locals who grew up with the game,
I think the marble players really respect.
Fulcher helped turn Standing Stone Park and its marble yard into a sort of field of dreams.
I don't think people really understand that this is an actual strategic, nearly Olympic-worthy game, I would say.
You could say 32-year-old Kenzie Adams is one of the new faces of the local Rolley Hole scene. He and his teammate, Andrew Walker, won the 2021 championship.
Eventually, this will get so round that there'll be no dust coming off of it. So, by that point, that's all right. We'll worry about it directly.
Like a lot of the players, Kenzie actually makes his own marbles out of flint, glass wouldn't be strong enough for the game. It's something he learned from his father, who learned it from the likes of Bud Garrett.
Where do you keep your marble that you won the Rolley hole with?
In a cologne box with the rest of them.
Now, we realize at this point in the story that we still haven't actually explained the rules of Rolley hole, but that's sort of because we don't even understand them, having spent a week studying it.
I think what makes it so challenging is that you can't just look at it and pick it up in 2 minutes. You have to understand a few things about it.
And it wasn't just us from Sunday Morning. In fact, many of the spectators we spoke to, like Patrick and Marcy Randall, were also pretty confused.
I worked here for like 17 years. I still don't know how to play Rolley hole.
We even asked one of Bud Garrett's daughters, Connie, to try to explain it.
But no, I just always was around watching it, but I don't know how.
It makes me feel better that you were raised in this and you don't understand it, because I don't understand what the hell is going on.
Maybe the point isn't so much how Rolley hole is played, but that it's still being played on a chilly night somewhere near the Tennessee-Kentucky line. A tradition, as they say, unlike any other.
When you say you had some challenges growing up, are you talking about your mom and dad?
Well, my mom and dad were 17 and 19 when they had me, so they did their best. It wasn't them.
More with Pamela Anderson right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Here's more from Jim Axelrod's conversation with Pamela Anderson.
A lot of my understanding from this is reading this wonderful book you've written. And on page 194 of this book, you write that you survived LA only because of your Vancouver roots. Mm-hmm. What about your roots here gave you the strength to survive what Hollywood threw at you?
Well, I survived here. I survived circumstances as a child. And I also had a really wonderful grandfather. And he was very mystical and metaphysical, and we talked about mythology and fairy tales, and so I had this imagination, this really strong imagination that he really encouraged. And it kind of gave me this whimsical nature, that to be naive, and I felt like Mr. Magoo. No, everywhere I turned, I just survived somehow. Mm-hmm. So that was ingrained in me.
When you say you had some challenges here growing up, are you talking about your mom and dad?
Well, my mom and dad were 17 and 19 when they had me, so they did their best. It wasn't them, so much as they had a little bit of a volatile relationship, but they, stuck it out and are still together, and they're madly in love, and I love them so much, and don't have there's no animosity, there's nothing like that there. There were the people around them when I was young. I think that was really hard for them to protect me against.
How are you processing being a small town girl one moment, running down the beach in this iconic imagery of the entire decade, the next moment? How are you making sense of it?
Well, you don't realize how big the show is when you're doing it. I was on the beach, I was in the show, and then, they were sending me to Europe to do some promotion, and that's when you see all this craziness and people crashing into each other and people falling down backwards down escalators, and you just look around and it's like, who are they looking at? What's the big deal? And then you slowly realize how popular the show is. And
was it all great, or was part of it a little disorienting?
Well, it was disorienting, but you just have to deal with it. You're working, and it's exciting because people like you. But there was some crazies that came around. There's people that broke into my house and were wearing my Baywatch bathing suit. And it was really, I think it took its huge toll on Tommy and I, trying to deal with that at that time, where there was so much paparazzi, people hanging from trees and shooting into your house and setting us up, where they would poke fun at me, and then Tommy would knock them out, and someone would break a hip rolling down a hill. It's just lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit.
You're describing this, and I'm thinking to myself, there are very few human beings who've walked the earth who've had your experience. It's 30 years old now. Do you understand it now?
No.
The journey, the process, from all the wildness, the impetuous falling in love, to where you are now. Does it feel like a long time?
Feels like a blink of an eye. I feel like yeah, it doesn't feel like any time has passed. I mean, time is an illusion. It feels, this has been decades, but it could be yesterday.
I mean, you're speaking with such hope about what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like being here is just a way station? I'm going to gather myself, and then there are many chapters ahead?
I hope so. I mean, I came here with a broken heart, and I always say a broken heart is the first step to enlightenment. Or, a broken heart is like angel wings. I say it's part of the journey, and
Healing
is part. And coming here, I definitely feel like I'm just regrouping, getting myself together. I also want to be close to my parents in their elder years, so I need a place where I know they're safe. This was always my plan, by the way, is to get them to come to this property and be here.
How is your self-esteem?
Better. Better. And I'm proud of myself. I look at my life and think, I've had a fun life. I've had a wild and crazy life, and it takes a brave person to have a life like that. So I am happy, and I look back sometimes and I think, I forgot, I did Baywatch, I did VIP, I did Stacked, I did all these great TV shows that I was executive, that, I created, and I worked really hard. I'm not just one of these famous people for being famous. I worked hard.
I'm Lee Cowan. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you right back here next time on Here Comes the Sun.